I'm doing a lot of deciding right away when certain tasks are being complete. That's one of the ways I get a lot done in one singular day is deciding in advance when I'm going to do what. Another thing that I do is for repeat tasks and processes that I do a lot, I have a method for how I do that. Welcome to the Her First podcast, a platform to help online business owners, coaches, and creators gain the confidence needed to build a successful business while creating a sustainable lifestyle balance. We are here to help you prioritize yourself in business and life. I'm Joanna Newton.
And I'm Michelle Puolani. In this podcast, along with the Her First Collective, you can engage in the challenges women face in business, ways to increase your impact or income online, and how to make it all work while launching, scaling, or maintaining. Spoiler, it's not about perfectionism, hustling, or a copy-paste methodology. Let's dive in. Quote, I try to prepare for everything beyond the extent of preparation. End quote. That is Taylor Swift. The way in which we execute has everything to do with the way in which we prepare. So this is the lesson that I did not learn soon enough and what we're talking about today. I looked at models and examples of success that I was really hoping to accomplish and embody. And I just thought that it came easy to them because they had more experience than I did or because they were more genuinely qualified. Until I really started learning from the top 1% of high performers and wildly successful business owners out there. The biggest differentiating factor in your sales, your reach, your impact on stage or online has to do with preparation. So the best and most successful YouTubers prepare weeks in advance of what's going to be included in their filming. The best and most successful content creators map out their strategy, study the competition, and do the market research to understand their audience and what type of content is going to be viral-esque or worthy of watching in the first place. This takes really understanding what you're passionate about, what type of work you perform best, and figuring out the best systems to help you move through the process efficiently. So when you think about the way that you execute your time, you have to consider what you're putting into the preparation of that execution first and foremost. How are you planning your day? What tasks are you prioritizing? And what investments are you making with your time? We're going to chat all about what that looks like today for Joanna and I in our businesses and things that you should be considering when you are planning your day so that you execute at a very high level. Because if you're not getting the results that you want to see, it's likely an issue of where you're placing your time, attention, and focus.
Time is such a hard thing to talk about because it's so finite. Like, we only have so many hours in a day. Our brains can only function at a high level so many hours in a day. We need rest. We need time for so many different things. And as a business owner, you want to get beyond that like time for money concept, which then makes your time even that more valuable because the things you are doing and how you're spending time is building something bigger than one individual, right? Bigger than one person, one income, one thing. You're almost creating this living, breathing entity that exists. One of the coolest things about my business is, well, obviously I'm a key player as one of the co-founders. If something were to happen to me and I couldn't work for 4 weeks, there are processes in place where it could keep going without me. And that is so cool, right? You're building this thing that's bigger than yourself. And when you think about planning your day, it's super important because you want to have productive days that are really fulfilling and that make you really happy. So before we get into what my day looks like, what Michelle's day looks like, how we plan our days, I want to talk about some things that you should be considering when thinking about planning your time and planning your day as an entrepreneur. The first thing that I kind of want to talk about is you really should sit down and think about you. What works for you, what your work cycle is, when you like to wake up, when you like to go to bed, when you do what type of work best. Quick tasks, deep work, creative tasks, because I think every individual is very different, is very, very different for what works best for them. I, as an example, I am not an early riser. Like, it's not something that really works for me. I spent some time trying once to become an early riser, but I'm just not. And that's okay. And that doesn't make me not successful. On paper, my business is successful. I do a lot in a day. I just don't do it at 5 a.m., and that's okay. Some people thrive waking up at 5 a.m. So when you start to actually sit down and plan your day, because you should sit down and plan your day. I want you to think about you, what you do best, when you do best, and what's your ideal situation? What do you want a day to look like?
If you are someone who transitioned from being an employee to working for yourself or moving from some type of model to another type of model, or now you're a solopreneur, or now you're working from home, or now you're doing something different, oftentimes we tend to carry bad habits with us. So we tend to bring over the way in which we approach our day, the way in which we approach our schedule that used to serve us in the model or the business or in the role of what we used to do, but that don't serve us now. And as business owners, coaches, creators, online consultants, freelancers, whatever it is that we're doing typically in the digital space, that model doesn't fit anymore. And sometimes we actually forget and realize that we get to be the decision makers of our time and how we're investing that schedule. So I talk to a lot of people and they feel like, oh, I'm just busy. I'm overwhelmed. There's so many meetings. I have all these things going on. I'm like, okay, well, what of this do you actually want to be doing? And they start to look at it and they're like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm like, okay, well, cut it out or do this differently or reposition this or turn this into something different. And we forget that we are the ones who are ultimately in charge of and in control of our schedules. So if you don't want to take meetings on a certain day, don't take meetings on that day. If you want to integrate certain practices into your schedule, you have the prerogative, the ability to do that. And I think this conversation is more about setting boundaries. So, one of the things to keep in mind when you're planning for your day is integrating wellness, well being, strategies in which you can have healthy habits and actual practices that support your life alongside your business. Because remember, you're doing this because you wanted the freedom, you're doing this because you wanted the ability to live your life in a way that is joyful, that is purposeful, that does have passion and not just hustle and grind your way through business. When you're approaching your schedule and your day, keeping in mind that, again, you are in charge, you get to decide, and you get to create the systems, you get to actually create the schedule that you want to embody, that you want to have on a consistent and regular basis.
Right. And actually scheduling that time for your wellness activities, for your self care, for workouts, for meditation, for those things, putting that as part of your day and making that a priority is really important, as well as like family time or time with your spouse or partner. Actually putting in those pieces. And I'll tell you a really good, simple example. My husband and I, we're both very busy. We have a child. She's home for the whole summer. We don't have family in the area, so we don't really have free babysitting or things like that. It's hard for us to get time for just us. So if we've been feeling like we've been like not able to have alone time, we will take a morning when our daughter is at school or at a camp and do something just the two of us because it's a little pocket of time I can find that I can do that. And I'll schedule it and I'll put it on my calendar. So tomorrow, my husband and I started playing pickleball. My daughter has a camp. He doesn't have anything going on in the morning. I didn't have any meetings. So I put a meeting block on my calendar and I was like, after we drop May off for camp, we're going to go play pickleball and do that together because we can. I can take 9:30 on a morning and take an hour and a half to go do those things. But you can't if you're not intentional. And you can't if you don't make the time and do the things, block off the time, say no to the meetings and schedule around it. So when you're planning your day, finding time to put time for those life things is really important because as an entrepreneur, it can be really easy to work from when you wake up to when you go to bed if you don't actually bake in time for the time with family, for time for wellness. Another thing you want to think about when actually planning your days, your weeks, your months is what are your priorities? And I think this is both from a business perspective and a personal perspective. So, thinking about what your business priorities are, making sure you're spending time on those high value tasks that are important to your business at the moment. That also means you need to have business priorities. This is like a total aside, but like if you as a business don't have a plan for what you want to accomplish in a quarter or in a year or things like that, it can be really hard to be strategic about your time. So make sure your business as a whole has its priorities and then make sure the tasks you're focusing on during your work time match what those priorities are. Can be really easy to go down a rabbit hole. You might say, I want to launch 2 digital products this year, but then you decide you want to just like go research some new AI thing that has nothing to do with your priorities. you should probably have some time to just like do research, learn things, have fun. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. But if you spend a whole week on something that isn't your business priorities, that can be a problem for you. So understanding your business priorities, making sure you're spending most of your time on your business priorities, understanding your personal priorities, your personal goals, the things outside of your business that are important, making sure you're prioritizing those. It can be really easy to let outside friends, outside family member, your clients, your customers dictate your time. And it's really important that you don't let that happen. And understanding your priorities is a big part of that.
Absolutely. We have a great episode actually that goes over this when it comes to setting goals for your week, your month, your day, and your quarter. So go back, give that a listen. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit subscribe. We talk all about how to better leverage your time as an online business owner, content creator, or coach so that you can see more success in your reach, your impact, and your income. I think a lot of what this comes down to is actually healthy boundaries, is being able to set the boundaries that you need to have in between the people, the relationships that are trying to vie for your time, right? The clients, the customers, the students, the audience members, family or friends, or anyone who kind of comes into the picture, that networking person that wants to get together for a chat. Being able to hold healthy boundaries in your work and in your personal life is critical here. And that does take practice. And it does come back to realizing your values, realizing your mission, realizing your priorities and the goals that you have so that you can stay aligned to those as you take action. And one thing to focus on in the business, which is something that I waited on for too long because I was so focused on building the stuff, right? Like I felt like, okay, I've got to have the social media presence. Okay, I've got to have the website. Okay, I've got to have these pages. Okay, I've got to have these emails. Okay, I've got to have this presentation. Okay, I've got to have these products and programs. And I got so lost in all of that creation methodology, in all of that creation and having those assets, but I wasn't focused on the revenue generating tasks of actually getting clients, building my email list, and then converting those people into the products and programs. So I wasn't really doing the sales aspect of my business. I was marketing, I was getting leads, I was getting in front of people, I was doing all the stuff, but I wasn't focused on actually generating revenue because I really didn't actually, I think, see myself as a business at the time. So I really needed to rethink and reframe how I saw my business, how I saw my activities, and realize and actualize what those revenue generating tasks are, and then prioritize them as I move through my day and as I move through my schedule.
Prioritizing revenue generating activities was something that was actually kind of hard for me. And this is something I learned to do in order to get myself like promoted in the corporate world. And that ended up translating into being, a good, successful business owner. But when I started in my career, a lot of times when you're an entry level position, you don't do a lot of revenue generating activities, right? And you have a lot of tasks you have to complete. And I became very obsessed with like my inbox being at 0 and all of my tasks being checked off and all of the things happening rather than focusing on things that made money. This, if you're in the corporate world, can keep you in low level jobs. You're obsessed with just completing all of the things just so the tasks are done, even if they're not making money. That kind of keeps you in that like entry level role. I'm just going to keep giving that person tasks. They're going to do the task, then they're going to do their task the next day. And I often like wanted to wear as a badge of honor. Like I always finish all my work. Like that was a good thing. And there are good things to that. When I was able to see success in my corporate career was when I was really able to tie my activities to revenue. And when I started focusing on revenue generating activities, and then as an executive started saying like, hey, we're actually going to stop doing that thing because it's not making us money. Or we're going to deprioritize that because it's not making us money. We're going to push that project back because it's going to prevent us from doing this project that's going to make us money, right? That's how you become a great corporate executive of being able to figure out how to prioritize those things that are going to make you money. And then as a business owner, it's the same thing. It can be really, really easy to look through your inbox and just answer them in chronological order of when you receive them. When really you could be looking at your inbox and saying, okay, what are the deals I need to close to respond to? That's number one. What are the client projects that we're getting a second invoice for that need to get finished so that we can get that second invoice? What are the tasks that are going to bring in money? Because when you have money, you can outsource the necessary tasks. There are necessary business tasks that don't necessarily generate revenue, but if you have revenue, you can outsource those things so you can focus on generating revenue.
And as you're listening to this, you might think like, oh, well, I'm in this to serve and I'm in this to help people and I'm in this to make an impact. And I get that, but you actually cannot have impact without income in the long term. You might be able to do it on the short term, but if you're not generating revenue and you're not able to pay your bills and you're not able to pay yourself, you're going to burn out really, really quickly. So I want you to focus on both and how can you serve and how can you create impact by generating income. So in me, for my core program, Fit CEO, we actually focus on this planning piece so much. It is such an important marker of success is this idea and concept of preparation. It's like you gotta prepare. And we so often, as work from home, stay at home entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call yourself, that we get stuck in the trap of just waking up and getting into work and letting the entire day be putting out fires or responding or not doing any active high priority tasks because we're just pulled into everything and then 10 hours go by and you didn't actually accomplish very much. So if you struggle with that, really tune into what we're sharing with you today. Joanna and I are going to share examples of our schedules and how we move through our day that might not necessarily apply to you, but it's a good idea to just kind of take it as inspiration and starting to question, how am I spending my time? If I'm not getting the results that I want in my business, it's because of the way that you're investing your time. It's your schedule. It's the way you run your day. It's the activities that you focus on because that will make up your goals. That will make up your outcome and whatever you're looking to accomplish. Listening in and then reflecting on your schedule and how you might be able to tweak, change, adjust as we move through this.
Preparation is so important. And I think we forget how important it is. We think we want to do something big, something great, something fantastic, but don't decide when we're going to do it or how we're going to do it or what the process is for doing it, then you're not going to do it. And I think in these examples, I'm sure Michelle and I's days are very, very different. We're very, very different people with different personalities, way we work, different responsibilities. They're going to be very different. And so as you're listening, you can kind of use our examples of like how we create our days to start thinking about what your ideal day is and how you're going to be the most productive.
We also have different business models, so keeping that in mind as well. Joanna is an agency. They have a lot of done for you services. I am coaching and consulting and digital products. So the way in which I govern my time is going to be very different than the way in which she governs her time. So keeping that in mind as well for you as you think about what is my business model? Where are my high priority tasks? Where are my revenue generating tasks? And where is it important that I invest my time and energy or make space for? So for me, I will admit, I have tried over and over and over and over again to create schedules. Like if you knew the numbers of like Monday through Sunday breakdown of days and times and the exactness of what I've tried to create in the past, it's ridiculous. It's actually a total waste of time because I am not someone who's meant to stick to a rigid schedule and do the same thing every day. It's something that does not work for me. So I have accepted that and moved on from trying to think about how can I just be the most consistent person and do the exact same thing at the exact same time every single day because it doesn't work for me. I'm not a very routine person. I like the flexibility, I like the flow, and I like change and I want change. I'm not okay with the status quo. I'm not okay with the same secure thing on a daily basis. So you might lean one way or the other, again, keeping that in mind. So throughout the week, I have specific days dedicated to certain buckets of activities or businesses. So right now, I'm kind of in a limbo place with 2024 because I've got Her Healthy Habits, I've got my marketing and business consulting, and then I've got To Be Honest Beverage Company. This is not something that I highly recommend to anyone, but as I sort this out and organize it for myself, it's what works and what I'm finding is the best way that I can handle this at this time. And so what I do is I'll either take sole specific days, like for example, today is Wednesday, we record our podcast, I do a lot of editing and production. I do outreach. I'm on another podcast interview later today. So I kind of try to focus my Wednesdays on Michelle Poulani, the marketing and business side of that, if I have to take meetings or anything else. And then I let other days be governed around either a specific business or a specific type of energy. We tend to get in the energetic flow of creation, for example, or outreach or sales or this. So, thinking about how you can bucket a certain activity or task that is of a certain nature and then block out a lot of time for that in your schedule. So, for me, I don't take meetings on Mondays and Fridays because those are creative content days for me. So, I'm either specifically writing or I'm specifically filming or I'm specifically doing something that is creative that I can give myself a large time block for that doesn't have any interruptions, it doesn't have any meetings, it doesn't have anything that's gonna pull my attention away from that thing.
I'm also someone who likes a really fluid schedule. And I think part of it is because I have a lot of balls in the air. Trying to stick to a really rigid schedule wouldn't actually lend itself well for me and what I do. I've got like a husband who needs something sometimes, a child who needs something sometimes. I have employees, I have clients who have different deadlines on different things. Like having a super rigid schedule would not work for me. One thing that I did before Millennial Marketer, I started sort of my entrepreneurial journey doing social media consulting for people. I had a full-time job and I was doing some social media marketing consulting. And what I would do is very similar to what you were talking about. I had my full-time job, so I had to do that too. But then I would pick a day for each client. So I would be like, Mondays, I work on this client. Tuesdays, I work on this client. Thursdays, I work on this client. Great. It was great for a lot of reasons. One, because I was able to be in that energy for that client. If I was making content, creating posts, I was using their brand guidelines. Their stuff was open. All of that was happening. But I also made that clear to my client. So when they were like, when can you get this to me? And they were my Tuesday client, I'd be like, great, I'll get that to you by Tuesday. No problem. When did they get their things for review? On Tuesday. Like I would set them up to follow my schedule and they never had any problem with it because they knew, oh, I'll get that on Tuesday. And I just communicated that. So creating a schedule, informing your people, making it work with your business processes. For my social media clients that we have at Millennial, I do a very similar thing. If they have a meeting with me on Friday, we finish their content on Thursday, and then you're worrying about it on Thursday. You mentioned earlier different things work at different times. That worked. That client a day worked for me for a particular phase in life. That's not what I do now, but it is what worked at that time.
And being able to schedule in this way not only helps with the execution, but it helps you with executive functioning. So, we have a really great podcast on decision overwhelm that you should give a listen to because your ability to function throughout the day will determine the amount of goals that you reach and how you achieve what it is that you're looking to achieve in results. If you are losing your ability to function at a high level throughout the day because you're constantly deciding what you're going to do next, where your time is going to go, when you're having lunch, how you're going to carve out time to work out, it's often going to lead to procrastination, it leads to overwhelm, and it leads to burnout. So, in order to avoid that, you plan, you prepare, you create this schedule that's going to work for you. And then you don't have to decide when you're going to get that client work done. You don't have to decide when you're going to create content because it's already mapped out in your strategy. And then you just move through that with a lot more efficiency, a lot more ease, and a lot more productivity. So, you're accomplishing a lot more with less effort. So for me, that's kind of on a weekly basis, right? I look at my days, I look at the blocks of time that I can kind of carve out that would be appropriate to the bucket that I'm paying attention to so I can stay in that energy, I can stay in that flow. On a daily basis, I start with me first thing. I always have, but it's just looked different over time. Again, you're going to evolve, you're going to grow, your routines are going to change, and that's okay. Don't feel like you have to implement everything. Don't feel like you have to try everything. Just feel like you can add one thing in, see if it works for you. If not, scrap it or try something else. So for me, first thing in the morning, I have a very simple, I know it sounds, I just said simple, but it's really like actually a 20 to 30-minute morning hygiene routine that I take myself through to kind of prep just for the start of the day. This is actually something that's been introduced in the past few months, but my husband and I are now taking about a 45-minute walk first thing in the morning. And I love this for a lot of reasons. It gives us a chance to connect. We don't have kids. We actually just put down our dogs, so there aren't a lot of things pulling our time and attention, but it allows us to connect. It allows us to get physical activity in first thing in the morning. We don't get on our phones. We don't get behind a screen. It gets light in our eyeballs, which helps with your circadian rhythm and your sleep. You get out into nature, you're breathing fresh air, and it helps stimulate creativity. So there's so many benefits to that particular practice that I knew about and thought were important, but had never actually implemented on a consistent basis. And it absolutely has been a game changer for me and our lifestyle. I do a little bit of my morning drink preparation that I typically take on the walk. And then I have my like breakfast smoothie. I kind of attempt meditation in the morning. I have tried so many different styles of meditation and I haven't found something that works for me consistently. So I'm really working on this piece of getting my day started with that intentionality and that mindfulness. Then I try to focus on deep work first thing in the morning when I start my work. So I'm not checking emails, I'm not looking at social media, I'm not taking meetings or responding to anything reactively. I'm just in that active creation mode and really focusing on, again, those revenue generating tasks or those high priority tasks that take that clear headedness and the focus of that kind of like first starting energy.
In my dream life, when I have my schedule like fully good, because I don't right now, I'll be perfectly honest, I will spend my morning focused on myself. Because I know for me, if a client has a deadline, I will get that thing done, even if I have to work late because I screwed it up. Or that's like my priority is of getting something done for something else, right? I'm very good at getting things done for other people, and I'm very bad at getting things done for me. And that's something about me. I know that about myself. But if I do it first, I can't cancel it on myself. If I say, and I know this from experience, if I say I'm going to work out at 5 p.m. tonight, and a client wants to take a call or a client has an emergency, I will always cancel the workout for that thing. That's not a good habit, but that I know myself, right? This is about knowing yourself and knowing what's good. If I were to do the workout first thing in the morning, the workout would get done and the client priority would happen. The other way, the workout doesn't get done, but the client work still gets done. The client work gets done either way. The me, I always will push to the side. Not a good habit, I will admit that, but it is the reality of what I do. And so if I can learn to put all that stuff in my morning, and it is, I'll be honest, it is hard with a child, and I think it will be easier as my child gets more independent to be able to do stuff like that in the morning. I kind of understand it is partly a phase in my life, but understanding yourself and how I work, know that I will never let a client down, but I'll easily let myself down. If you do those things first, then that prevents that from having to happen.
Also, I want to point out as you're listening, again, Joanna and I run different businesses. We have different models. We have different ways that we work and we generate revenue or we reach people or we market or we impact or we network. Like it's a very different approach. So again, keeping that in mind as you're reflecting on this and you're reflecting for yourself. And also, Joanna's at a much more successful and progressed version of her business than I am. Like I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm still putting the pieces together. And my model is going to have less to do with client delivery and client work. So there's not really anyone relying on me in that sense. If I'm creating products and programs that are delivered on a digital basis, yes, I have that need and I have that pull from the student or from the client that's in the product or program, but it's not on a timeline. Their website isn't dependent on this. There aren't links that are broken. There isn't social media that's content that's going out live. Like it is different. And so there's a different ability to create the schedule that works for each of us. Again, keeping that in mind as you reflect on this for yourself. And I think really focusing on the priorities that are important to you, that are important to your business, that are important to the lifestyle of how you want to be leading is critically important here. And for me, that has taken on a different form as I've evolved in my business. And I've realized, oh, this is how I want to be spending my time. This is how I want to live my life. This is how I want to run my business. And I think sometimes when we first get started, because I did this, it was just kind of like the hamster wheel / trying to do everything, trying to respond to everything, trying to take every opportunity. And over time, I've been able to realize that's not actually how I want to live my life or how I want to run my business. And so I get to be more strategic about how I invest that time and how I take on opportunities or what I say no to. Again, that healthy boundary creation is such an important part of this process and owning how you're showing up in that. And so for me, any meetings, anything that people want to connect about, I will book in the afternoons. And I usually have a cutoff time. I'll work in the evenings and I'll work on weekends. I'm, again, flexible and fluid like that because sometimes I'll just take an entire day off during the week. Or I'll take an afternoon off, or someone's coming to town and I want to go to lunch. Like that is part of my schedule. I work out pretty much Monday through Saturday, except for Tuesdays, and that's going to be changing soon as well. But I work out at about 5:30 every single day, 4:15 on Fridays. And so what I'll do is I'll book my meetings or anything that I have to connect with someone about that takes away from my creative work at the end of my day. So if I end the day at 5 and I'm going to work out, then I will book a meeting 4 to 5. And then the next meeting 3 to 4. And that just kind of allows you to keep that time blocking for creativity and keep that openness for the important priorities on your schedule first, and then getting to those other things that might not be quite as high priority, but are still important that you do.
And it's so important to know how you work, know what works for you, and do what works for you. For me and the way plan my day, I mentioned earlier, like I have a very fluid kind of schedule. And part of that is because the reality of my business, I am a little bit dictated. Like I have control, but I am a little bit dictated by my clients' needs, my team's needs, and all of those things that are going on. I really like quiet, meetingless mornings. I try to keep my first meeting at noon as much as possible so I can put in self-care things, deep work time, all of that in my mornings is important to me. It's when I do really good work. I also work with a lot. I'm in the East Coast, but I work with a lot of people in the West Coast. So having afternoon meetings is just kind of important. It's their earlier mornings, my afternoon, and that works out really, really well. The big thing that I do to keep self productive and plan my day is I do not, even though every day is different, I don't plan it as I go. So, as an example, there are two different ways that I think that this works. If I know I have a project that I have to work on. So, for example, I was working on a website migration and the work was done by my team member and I needed to go through, test all of the buttons, check all of the things, do that final review. When I found out that it was done and ready for my review, I blocked time on my calendar to do it. I said, this date, this time, this is when I'm going to do it. And it goes on my calendar. So I do a lot of deciding when I'm going to do things. And that makes sure that I know when I'm going to do it. I don't wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to do right now? My calendar and Monday.com tell me what to do. Those things tell me what to do because previous me decided when I was going to do it. And that's what's really important here is I'm not sitting around every day thinking, what tasks do I want to do today? When I get a task in is when I decide when I'm going to do it. It goes on the calendar or it goes in Monday.com with a date, with a time. Now, sometimes those things need to change, but then I pick a new date and time. I don't say, oh, I'll do that next week. I say, okay, I didn't get to it today. I'm going to do it tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So I'm doing a lot of deciding right away when certain tasks are being complete. That's one of the reasons, the ways I get a lot done in one singular day is deciding in advance when I'm going to do what. Another thing that I do is for repeat tasks and processes that I do a lot, I have a method for how I do that thing. So, say I'm trying to clear out my inbox because I have a lot of client messages, a lot of customers, a lot of potential customers, emails in my inbox. I don't just like answer them as they come in. I will say, okay, I've got a meeting. I've got this. At this time, I'm going to get through as much as my inbox as I can. I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to go through my inbox. And what I'll do is I will look for unread messages from people I'm having sales conversations with. Those get done first. Then I will look at unread messages from time sensitive client projects. I will do those first. And then I'll see what else I can get to in that 30 minutes. And then I will move on to the next thing. Right. And then I might do that again another couple of hours. Right. But I have processes for how I do certain tasks. So I'm not doing that what we were talking about, that decision fatigue. I'm not deciding what to do. It's like, okay, I need to do my inbox. How do I do my inbox? I'm going to do it the same way I always do it. That's how I'm going to work for it. If I'm looking through Monday to check out my team's work, I have a process for how I look at that, how I go about it. And I think that's really important because I think a lot of times people spend a lot of time deciding what to do or how to do it, but I've already figured that out. So when I turn attention to a task, it helps me like switch into gear to do that thing. And while every day is different, the tasks that I have routines. The different tasks have a process. And so I can look at, at the end of my day today, as an example, I'm going to look at what's left, what has to get done. and I'm going to look at my day tomorrow and decide when I'm going to do what in advance. So I'm not spending time during my day trying to figure out what to do, what to prioritize, what to do. Now, right now, we're in like a big scaling phase of our business. So I do work a lot and I am very busy and I take a lot of meetings, like a lot of meetings because I have team calls. I'm still doing client work. I have sales calls. And then I have calls around building the next phase of my business with digital products, other things we're working on, really exciting things we're working on. I am very busy. I'm not doing my ideal schedule right now. I think in my ideal world, I would never have any meetings any morning before noon. And I would probably do like a 4-day, I would have a whole day off of all meetings. That's not the reality that I live in right now, but it is what I'm aiming towards. And I know I will get there. Right. And that's okay. I think I'm kind of willing to make that work because I see where it's going. I actually really like what I do. Even though there's like an ideal schedule out there for me that I'm not seeing yet, my plan is to get there. And I know I will get there. And that will come with when we can get our business to the revenue that it has. I can hire people to take some of these tasks that I'm doing and own some of these tasks that I'm doing that will then allow me to have that schedule. I'll know I'll get there. I'm just not quite there yet.
But having those systems and efficiency pieces in place for the tasks and activities that you do on a repetitive way throughout the week, very important to set that up. So you're not just trying to recreate the wheel every single time. And again, we're in different places. So where you are in your business is going to be very different. There's actually a really great episode on The Game podcast by Alex Hermosi about makers and managers and how they're investing their time. And at this point in our businesses, I am more of a maker. I need to have creative outlet. I need to be putting content together. I need to be growing my audience and generating those leads and like having that happen. But I don't have a lot to manage. Joanna is in a manager phase of her business where a lot of her tasks and activities are all about her team members and how they're engaging with clients or meeting with clients and actually making sure that those projects move forward. So her time is more effectively used as a manager in meetings at this point, and my time is more importantly used as a maker at this time and at this point in our business. So again, just understanding where you are and knowing that's not going to look the same as anybody else. So if you're enjoying this episode, go ahead and take a screenshot, share to social media, tag Joanna, tag myself, and write a list of your top priorities. I want you to give me the top 3 priorities that you are doing in your business that is generating revenue or giving you the impact that you want to reach. I'll take a look, we'll share it, and then also give you a little bit of feedback on what you're focusing on.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that this episode made you think a little bit about how you're planning your day, how to not just kind of follow the hamster wheel or get stuck in your 9 to 5 bad tendencies that you may have, and really build the schedule that you want, that works for you, that helps you make money and be more productive.
Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in the Her First Collective, a free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?